What's going on YouTube? It's Vinny here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace a power steering pump on a 2006 Subaru WRX. Alright, your first step is going to be to remove this plastic cover. This is a 10mm. Next, once you have that plastic cover removed, you're going to see your alternator and your power steering pump is right down here. The first thing to do is we're going to loosen the tensioner bolts. Loosen these two bolts right here. 12mm and 12mm, and then if you look over to the right side, there's another one up here. That's another 12mm. That's going to loosen this alternator, which is going to take tension off of this belt, which will allow us to eventually remove the power steering pump. Alright, so now with those three 12mm bolts loosened, I want to show you guys exactly what loosening those 12mm bolts does. So we're going to loosen this bolt, and I want you guys to watch the alternator drop as I do that. See how the alternator slowly went down? And that takes tension off of this belt right here. So as you loosen this 12mm, the alternator will drop, which gives you less tension on this belt to be able to remove it. And like that, the belt is now free. Also, another thing to show you guys, so you have two belts. This is the front belt, and let me remove it. Okay, here it is. To show you guys, this belt went on the power steering pump, the alternator, and then right down here on the front of the drive pulley. So if you're looking at how to reinstall the belt, you'll know it's those three pulleys right there. Another thing I just did was I put these bungee cords from the strut brace down around the inlet hose, and that's going to pull the inlet hose back a little bit, so it will kind of take the pressure off of the pump, because the inlet hose does sit against the pump right here. And I had this little rubber thing that I kind of smashed in there like so. So that protects the inlet hose from the high side line on the power steering pump. And once I remove it, you can kind of see how they're not touching now. That's because this bungee cord is pulling the inlet hose back. The next step is to remove the low side power steering line off of the pump. That's going to be this bolt right here, which is a 10mm. Beware that once you remove this line, this is going to leak power steering fluid. So you're going to want to have a water bottle or a rag to plug the end of this as you take it out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the low side line. 10mm. We do have a little plug here. I'm going to disconnect that. There's a little white tab on the top. You're going to pinch that and pull. Make sure you sit this one up here so you don't lose it. Leave it up there so you can see it, as well as this one. Oh, this was attached to the back of the pump. Common issue with these breaking off the back of your power steering pump. I'll show you once I have the pump out. Once I pull this line up, there's going to be fluid coming out, so I'm going to get a rag, and right when I lift it up, try to catch it. Boom, like that. And there's another rag down here to just kind of push on the top of the pump. You'll see it kind of overflows a tiny bit. Once you get the power steering pump line out, you're gonna have a rag on it, and I'm just gonna pull it over and sit it behind this screw with the rag on it. I'm also checking just to make sure it's not still pouring out, which it doesn't look like it, but to be safe, we're gonna leave the rag on there. Now over here, you're gonna see that O-ring that's in there. That's the ring that's supposed to be on the end of the low side line. So I'm gonna pull that out, get a little flathead in there. Boom. So if you guys ever have a whining power steering pump, this would be the O-ring that you guys replace. I'm not sure of the exact part number. I can link it in the description. This is a cheap $5 fix for a whining, noisy power steering pump. All it basically does is it seals where the low side line sits into the pump on the top right here. When these O-rings go bad, it'll start to pull air into the system, which basically makes the pump whine and make noise. So if you're replacing your power steering pump because you think it's broken because it's making noise, I would definitely recommend trying to replace this O-ring first to see if that could fix the problem. In my case, my power steering pump's leaking power steering fluid all over the top of my engine. So that's the reason I'm replacing my power steering pump today. Once you guys have the low side line off, you're gonna go ahead and take the high side line off. So that's a 14mm banjo bolt. Just be careful taking it out. So we're gonna go ahead and try to remove it. Break it loose like so. You're gonna see there's gonna be fluid that might come around the side. So I want you guys to get your rag in there as you take the bolt out.
Get out nice and slow.
Here's your banjo bolt. Take your banjo bolt out and this double washer thing, and you're gonna put those off to the side. Your high side power steering line should lift right up. Just wrap the rag around the end and you can sit that right up there. That should be far enough out of the way. I'm just gonna use a little bungee cord to just very gently hold this over here. And then you're gonna see there's more power steering fluid right on the high side line inlet part. So I'm just gonna get a rag and wipe that down so we don't spill it taking it out. Next step is to remove the 3 bolts holding the power steering pump in. It's gonna be hard to show you guys, but I'm gonna do my best. See that bolt right down there? That's a 12mm. Same thing over here on the other side is a 12mm. It's basically down under this pulley. You'll see it all the way back there. And then the third one, if you see this bracket, if you look down the back side, it has the slanted angle that goes all the way down. If you follow that, you'll see the other 12mm bolt. And you're gonna wanna remove that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I have my 12mm socket on the first bolt. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. Okay, once you remove that bolt, this is what it'll look like. You look over here, and I managed to get a socket on there. Right there is the socket on the bottom left bolt of the power steering pump. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that one next. All right, and that's the bottom left bolt of the power steering pump. To get to the back bolt of the power steering pump, there is a bracket right here. You're gonna wanna remove that. It's a 12mm bolt. What I had to do was I pulled that off right here. Be aware, it is attached over here to your turbo inlet hose right there. So I pulled this off. I slid in my short 12mm socket. Now I'm going to remove that bolt. So I got the 12mm bolt removed, which means this bracket pulls back out of the way. 3/8 extension on a 12mm socket. You can see the socket right down in there sitting on it. I'm gonna spin it. You guys can see that. That's your 12mm rear bolt on the power steering pump. I almost have mine out, so you guys can see. Boom, right down there. Looks like I do. So I'm probably gonna get a magnet here and try not to lose the bolt. So I have a magnet with a light on it. Grab that bolt, boom, pull her up nice and easy. Boom, just like that. Didn't lose no bolts. So to show you guys the difference in bolt sizes, this is the right side of the power steering pump, left side of the power steering pump, and the rear of the power steering pump. They all have a flat washer, a lock washer, and then the bolt. And lengthwise, the left side and the rear bolt are the same, whereas the right side is longer. When I say left and right side of your power steering pump, this is the left side, that's the right side, and that's the back. Once you have the 3 bolts removed, the last thing is you're going to remove this 12 fully. And once that's out, you'll be able to tell already the power steering pump's loose. So this is the only last bolt holding it in. That's the reason we left it in there. So just in case when you removed the other bolts, this didn't fall out of place. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. As I remove it, it's gonna fall like so. And we're just going to have to finagle this out. Push these out of the way. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of turning the power steering pump a little bit. There you go. That's how you get it out. So now that I got the power steering pump out, I'm gonna go ahead and clean everything up before we install the new one. I'm gonna use some pink spray. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys, this is the new pump. I ordered this online. I'll put a link in the description just to show you guys what it looks like. So this is where the pulley will sit on the front. Turn it around. On the rear will be the sensor. You're gonna take the sensor off of this one. You're gonna have the high side line here and the low side line here. we're gonna go ahead and get into removing the parts off the old one. We're gonna spin this around. Right here, you're gonna see is the sensor. That's a 17 millimeter. So lay it on the ground flat on the bracket and hold it tight. And then with a 17 millimeter wrench, and show you guys how I did it. I got the wrench on here, and since this one's kind of on there a little bit, you don't want to get the wrench on there the wrong way and try to pull it and damage anything. So I put the wrench on like this, held the pump down firmly, and then pushed it against the bracket to break it loose. And then once it's loose, it should just thread out like so. Okay, it's coming out. You're gonna see some fluid came out of there, and this is what the sensor looks like. There is a rubber O-ring around it, which looks okay to me. So I'm going to take this, get our new power steering pump, flip it around, and it's that blue cap. You're gonna pull the blue cap out and install your sensor. Kind of have to twist it out. I'm just gonna clean the old sensor off. Now I'm just going to reinstall the sensor into the new one. Boom, she's on there. If you do have whatever's left of the plug that came out of your new one, you can go ahead and plug up the bottom of your old one where that sensor was. This will just prevent a big mess. Next, we're going to remove the bracket off of your original pump. So with that, you're gonna get a 14 millimeter socket. We're going to hold the pump steady. Remove that 14 mil. There it is, all gross. We're gonna clean that off. Once you have the back bracket bolt removed, you're gonna flip the pump back over forward. You're gonna spin the pulley. If you can see in there, there's a bolt there and a bolt right in there. Those are two 12 millimeter bolts. Now with those 3 bolts removed, the pump should be free of this bracket. But what I'm noticing is the pump does not want to move. So I'm gonna get a little flathead in there, wiggle her back and forth.
Going from the back of it and prying it out. And to show you guys, this is how it comes out. Sits in there just like so and comes out.
So now I'm gonna go ahead and clean the bracket off. All right, so that's about as clean as it's gonna get. We're gonna go ahead and install this back onto the new pump. So you guys are gonna get the power steering bracket, and you're gonna get your new power steering pump, and you're gonna wanna make sure that your high side, low side lines are on top, and you're going to place the pump in the bracket like so. So I'm gonna start with putting the rear bolt in first. That'll actually help align everything. Starting to thread itself, I can feel. So now I'm gonna get the 2 other bolts for the front. Just be careful with these. You don't wanna cross thread them in there by hand first. So now they're all threaded in. It's in the right position. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten everything down. So the 2 front bolts are 12 millimeters. We're gonna zip those down. You're gonna look around the back and you're gonna have your 14 millimeter. You're gonna get your old pump and you're gonna get a pry bar or a long screwdriver, and you're gonna stick it through the pulley and then turn the pulley all the way up against this bracket up here. So I'm gonna get it like this, and then you're gonna get a 19 millimeter and remove the pulley. Just be very careful where your fingers are and how you're holding it. Here's your 19. So once you have your 19 millimeter off there, you're gonna go ahead and try to remove this pulley. I sprayed some WD-40 on here, and I'm gonna lay it on the pulley side, and try not to do this on concrete. I'm using cardboard, and I'm just gonna try to push the pulley down. For me, mine separated and came right off. Another way is to get a flathead or a pry bar and kind of work your way around to free it up. All right, so here's the old pump. The last thing we have to remove is this bracket here, and it looks like it's a 10 millimeter bolt. Get your old pump, 10 millimeter socket, and you're gonna remove this bracket. There's the bracket. You're gonna get your new pump. This is the front where the pulley goes on. You're gonna put your bracket, your 10 millimeter goes in. Voila.
Yo, Vinny T8 is the best at fixing cars. He helps me do work on mine right over there. He does all the work on the TC. and also all his own work on this beautiful WRX. So make sure you're subscribed to him if you're not subscribed. What are you doing, mate? All right, back to the video.
All right, so you got the new pump mounted onto the bracket. You're gonna take your power steering pulley and insert it back onto the new pump. You're gonna get your pulley. The flat side is the outside of it. The edge that sticks up is gonna go onto the splines of your power steering pump. So we're gonna put it on like that. Make sure this isn't in the way either. You're gonna install the pulley like so. The flat edge is on the outside and the raised edge is on the inside. Make sure you push the pulley down evenly so it's seated evenly. You can look inside of these holes to make sure that inner part is fully flat against the power steering pump bearing in there. So mine's looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall the 19mm nut. Okay, now I'm going to stick a pry bar in here and I'm going to tighten up this 19mm nut. And just like that, she's good to go. Having the old pump set up in a vise might be a good idea for this part. This is the fitting for the high side line. This is a 22mm. And you're gonna break that loose while it's in a vise, and then that's going to be inserted into the new pump. So once you remove this fitting adapter for the high side line, you're going to take off the old O-ring, and in this bag that came with the new one, there should be other O-rings. It's gonna have 3 O-rings and 3 banjo bolts. The 3 O-rings there are to replace one for the banjo fitting, one for the inlet tube or reservoir, and the other one is for the electric sensor on the back of the power steering pump. So here I have that high side fitting and the new O-ring. Going to put that on. You're gonna get your power steering pump, and the high side fitting is gonna go right on top in here. Make sure she's tight. Now that we have everything installed, we are ready to install the power steering pump back into the vehicle. So you're gonna get your new power steering pump, make sure your lines are on top, pulley's towards the front of the vehicle, and the bracket's on the right side. Here's the sensor wire. Mine looks like this. And it feels pretty loose installing it on the sensor on the back. So I'm gonna get a pair of needle nose and try to bend this shut a little bit. See how that hole's a little bit tighter now? So when I go to slide it on the back of the pump, on there, that was on there pretty good. So now I'm gonna pull it off. It ain't coming off as easy. So that'll be a little fix for that. Now we're gonna go ahead and carefully install the power steering pump into the vehicle. I'm just gonna tuck this wire down in there like that, so we don't damage it installing the pump. Grab your pump, tilt the back down a little bit to get it in, and then it should slide. You have to finagle it, and there it is. Then you'll be able to look inside there and see where the rear bolt hole is for this bracket. So the power steering pump's sitting in the correct position. I'm gonna go ahead and install the front right bolt right down in that open hole right there. Next, I'm going to install the bottom left bolt that goes right under here behind the pulley. Finally, we're going to install the last mounting bolt, which is in the rear. This is a 12mm, and I just want to show you guys, if you look right down in here, you see that bolt hole right there in the middle. That's the rear of this bracket right here. So we're going to try to feed this down there and bolt that on. To get that bolt all the way down there, I have a magnet. So you get the magnet on the bolt, and then you're going to want to feed it down to the hole slowly. Very slowly, right? I placed the bolt right on the hole, and I can even twist it a little bit to even get it started. So after you twist it and it threads a little bit, I just slid the magnet off like that. Make sure that the bolt's actually in there. Now you grab your 12mm with the extension on it, get it down there on that hole. So you're gonna get your 12mm on the bolt, and we're gonna start it by hand, tighten it up. And next I'm reinstalling the bolt for this bracket right here. It's a 12mm.
That's about as much as you're gonna get. And do that until
So we're gonna reinstall the high side line. With that, we're gonna need our banjo bolt again. And instead of using our double washer, we're gonna install these instead. You're gonna place one of the washers on the hole, like so. And one is gonna go on the bolt.
like that.
And then the bolt's gonna go through the line and back into the pump. Might have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it started. And that is a 14mm. This gets torqued down to 29 foot-pounds. Boom, 29 foot-pounds. Did you hear that? Next, you're gonna remove that green plug that's sitting on top for the low side line. Get your needle nose in there, get that out. You're gonna get your low side line, take your new O-ring and install the O-ring back on it, right onto the bottom here. And then that should go right in there. Press her in straight. Next, you're gonna get your sensor wire. Sensor wire is gonna sit right on the top of the low side hose, and then your 10 millimeter is gonna go in there and hold everything just right. The bracket should sit like that. Just gonna snug her up. So both of the high side and the low side lines are installed, as well as the power steering sensor bracket. Make sure all your hoses and everything are reattached. Don't forget to get the wire that plugs into the power steering sensor and reinstall that. So I'm gonna try to give you guys the best angle. You're gonna have to slide your belt back down. I'm gonna put the belt on the power steering pump first, and then I'm going to get it on the bottom down there on the drive pulley. Next step's gonna be to put this bolt in here. 12 millimeter goes in your tensioner. We're not gonna snug that one up yet. Next, you're gonna get this 12 millimeter and you're gonna tighten it to pull the alternator back up to the top, which will put tension on this belt. Before you fully tighten it up, make sure the belt is on every single pulley fully before you do put tension on it, because then it will destroy your belt. So I'm taking notice that about here, you can kind of compare it to the other belt. That seems good about there. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten that bolt in the front. Don't forget this one over here. It's another 12 millimeter. All right, now that everything's buttoned up on this, I have the belt tight, tensioner's tight, the bolt over here is tight, we have the bracket in the back, everything's plugged in, both lines are installed. You just want to double check your power steering fluid before you start the car. So now we're going to start the car, and I'm going to slowly turn the wheel left and right and listen for noises and check for leaks. So I just started the car. I'm going to slowly turn the wheel left and right to basically bleed out the power steering fluid system of air. With that, we're going to use Subaru automatic transmission fluid. This is what they use for their power steering fluid. So I'll put a link in the description. You guys can check it out. Look in the power steering fluid reservoir and check for air bubbles. That's how you'll be able to tell if there's air in the system. All right, so that's pretty much it for this installation. The power steering pump is in, everything's ran. I'm checking for any leaks. There's no leaks, it looks like. The power steering fluid reservoir is now at the cold max full level. So you guys are just gonna wanna make sure you turn the wheel left and right fully, slowly, until all the air is out of the power steering system. That's basically how you'll bleed it. And then you just want to keep topping off your power steering fluid reservoir with the transmission fluid. All right guys, so that pretty much wraps up the power steering pump install. I hope this video really helped. Everything in this video will have a link in the description if you're looking for the pump, the fluid, any accessories, tools, things I'm using. I'm going to put a link in the description for it down below, so make sure you check that out. So if this video really helped you guys, throw it a like. If you guys want to see more Subaru content, subscribe to my channel. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, just leave a comment. I'll get back to you pretty quickly. Again, I hope this really helped you guys. Thanks for watching.